What happens when the world tells you number? Over and over and over again, most people stop, they pack up, they surrender to the silence. But some, a very rare few, hear something completely different. They hear a countdown. What is the true anatomy of a business revolution? We think we know the story of Sara Blakely and the Spanx revolution. We picture a young woman in 1998, sitting in her apartment with exactly $5,000 in her savings account. A fax machine whirring in the corner, an absolutely absurd idea about footless pantyhose. We know she was laughed out of every single hosiery mill in North Carolina. They told her no. The buyers told her no. The industry told her no. But she built a multi-billion-dollar empire anyway. How was it just luck? No, it was a blueprint, a deeply guarded playbook written decades earlier by another woman who stood in the exact same position, staring down that exact same wall of rejection to understand the Spanx revolution. To truly master the power of hearing the word number, you have to rewind the tape. You have to travel back to a time before the internet, before viral marketing. To a daughter of immigrants who built a multi-billion-dollar beauty dynasty from absolutely nothing. She used a radical concept called high-touch marketing and invented something the world had never seen, the gift with purchase. This is the story of that blueprint. The secret architecture of the word number, and how it connects the shapewear revolution of the 21st century to the greatest beauty empire the world has ever seen. Imagine the 1930s, Queens, New York, a young girl born to Hungarian and Czechoslovakian immigrants. Her name was Josephine, but her family called her Estée. The world would eventually know her as Estée Lauder. Her childhood smelled of cold winters, burning coal, and the sharp scent of the hardware store her father ran above their tiny apartment. She did not have wealth, she did not have connections, she did not have a fancy business degree. She had an uncle, a chemist who mixed velvety face creams in a makeshift laboratory behind their house. Estée would watch him, fascinated. She would feel the texture of the creams, smooth them over her skin, and realize something profound. Women wanted to feel beautiful. It was not a luxury, it was a deeply human necessity. But the beauty industry back then was a fortress. It was controlled by massive corporations, giant advertising budgets, and unapproachable department store counters where aloof saleswomen looked down on everyday people. Estée was an outsider, a young mother with a few glass jars of homemade cream when she tried to sell her products. The answer was always the same. No, the department stores said no, the distributors said no, the massive advertising agencies wouldn't even return her calls. This is the exact moment where 99% of entrepreneurs fold. They accept the rejection, they believe the no, but Estée, just like Sara Blakely decades later, viewed the word no as a puzzle. If she couldn't come through the front door, she would build her own door, and this is where the genius of high-touch marketing was born. She realized something that the giant corporations had completely forgotten. Business, at its absolute core, is an exchange of human energy. If she couldn't afford a full-page advertisement in a glossy magazine, she would become the advertisement. She started walking into beauty salons across New York City, not department stores, local, hot, noisy beauty salons. Women would be sitting under those massive dome hair dryers, trapped, bored, waiting for their hair to set. Estée would walk right up to them. She didn't just talk, she touched. She would gently take a woman's hand, open a jar of her uncle's cream, and massage it directly into her skin. High touch, literally. She broke the physical barrier. She understood that once a woman felt the quality, once she smelled the luxurious scent, once she experienced that fleeting moment of being cared for by another human being, she wouldn't just buy the product, she would become a disciple. Think about the sheer audacity of this. In a world of cold corporate sales, she offered profound warmth. She called it the telephone, telegraph, telewoman method. She knew that a woman who felt beautiful would tell 3 of her friends. And those 3 would tell 3 more. It was the original viral marketing, long before computers even existed, and it worked. The salons started selling out. Women started asking for Estée's creams by name, but she wanted more. She wanted the Holy Grail. She wanted to break into the grandest department store in the world, Saks Fifth Avenue. She marched into the buying office at Saks. She pitched her heart out, and the buyer looked at this unknown woman from Queens with her little glass jars and said, "No, not interested. The market is saturated. We have the big brands. We don't need you." Sound familiar? It is the exact echo of the hosiery mill owners in North Carolina telling Sara Blakely that footless tights were a stupid idea. It is the universal chorus of the gatekeepers, but Estée refused to leave. She asked the buyer to simply try the cream, just try it. The buyer refused, so Estée did something that is still whispered about in marketing lore, whether by accident or brilliant design. She dropped a jar of her Youth Dew bath oil right in the middle of the department store floor. It shattered. The rich, spicy, intoxicating scent immediately flooded the entire floor. It drifted through the air conditioning vents. It completely overwhelmed the space. Suddenly, elegant women in expensive coats were stopping in their tracks. They were turning their heads. They started asking the sales clerks, "What is that incredible smell? And where can I buy it?" The buyer, watching this real-time hysteria, had no choice. The number instantly transformed into a yes. Saks placed an order for $800 worth of product. Back then, that was a massive sum, but getting on the shelf is only half the battle. How do you get people to actually buy it when you still have $0 for advertising? The massive beauty brands were spending millions on radio spots and magazine spreads. Estée had to outsmart them. She looked at her budget. She looked at her products. And she invented a concept that would permanently alter the landscape of global retail. She decided to give her product away, for free. Her advisors called her crazy. "You can't give away your inventory. You'll go bankrupt." But Estée understood the psychology of the consumer better than any man in a gray flannel suit. She introduced the gift with purchase. If a woman bought a face cream, Estée would give her a small, elegant sample of face powder. Completely free. No one had ever done this before. It was a radical disruption of the transactional nature of retail. Suddenly, buying wasn't just a transaction, it was a reward, it was a surprise. It felt like receiving a present. The strategy was explosive. Women lined up around the block at Saks Fifth Avenue. The inventory sold out in exactly 2 days. The gift with purchase wasn't just a marketing gimmick. It was a profound psychological trigger. It triggered reciprocity. It triggered loyalty. It allowed women to try new products without financial risk, and more importantly, it made the customer feel deeply valued. Estée took the cold, corporate reality of buying makeup and turned it into an intimate exchange between friends. She built a multi-billion-dollar beauty dynasty, not by outspending her rivals, but by outcaring them. She redefined the word no. She proved that a lack of resources is actually the greatest advantage an entrepreneur can have, because it forces you to become dangerously creative. Now, fast forward 50 years, keep the blueprint in your mind: high-touch marketing, extreme personal conviction, transforming a product into an intimate human connection, and the absolute refusal to accept the word no. Enter Sara Blakely. She was selling fax machines door to door in Clearwater, Florida. 7 years of cold calling, 7 years of doors slamming in her face, 7 years of hearing the word number up to 50 times a day. It was brutal, it was soul-crushing, but it was also a masterclass. Every single rejection was callousing her mind. She was learning how to stand in front of a hostile audience, smile, and hold her ground. She was being forged in the fire of absolute indifference. Then came the idea. She was getting ready for a party. She wanted to wear white pants, but she hated the way her undergarments looked beneath the fabric. So, she took a pair of scissors and cut the feet out of her pantyhose. It was a revelation. It smoothed out her silhouette, but let her wear her open-toed shoes. The concept of Spanx was born. She spent her entire life savings, $5,000, to get a patent and create a prototype. She cold-called every hosiery mill in the country. And just like Estée, she was met with a chorus of no. The industry was run by men, men who had never worn pantyhose a day in their lives, men who looked at this young woman with no manufacturing experience, no fashion background, and saw absolutely nothing of value. They dismissed her. They told her the idea was fundamentally flawed, but Sara remembered the lesson of the doors in Florida. She did not hear the word no as a final destination. She heard it as a starting line. She finally convinced one mill manager to make her prototype, not because he believed in the product, but because he showed the idea to his daughters, and his daughters told him he was crazy if he didn't make it. She had the product, now. She had to sell it. She managed to secure a 10-minute meeting with a buyer at Neiman Marcus in Dallas. She flew there, walked into the pristine, intimidating corporate office, and began to pitch. The buyer was polite, but she was clearly not convinced. Sara could feel the no hanging in the air. The pitch was dying. The opportunity was slipping away. Sara had a choice: accept the number and go home, or channel the exact same audacious energy that caused a woman to drop a bottle of bath oil on the floor of Saks Fifth Avenue. Sara stopped talking. She looked at the buyer and said, "You need to see this to understand it. Come with me." She practically dragged the executive buyer of Neiman Marcus out of her office, down the hall and into the ladies' restroom right there, in the bathroom stall. Sara put on her own product underneath her white pants. She stepped out. She showed the buyer the before and the after, high touch, extreme personal conviction, breaking the corporate barrier to create an undeniably human moment. The buyer was stunned. She looked at the transformation. She saw the sheer passion of this young woman standing in a public restroom fighting for her dream. The number dissolved. Neiman Marcus placed an order to stock Spanx in 7 stores, but just like Estée Lauder, getting on the shelf was only the beginning. Sara had absolutely no money for advertising. The massive lingerie brands had millions. They had billboards in Times Square. They had television commercials. Sara had nothing. How do you win a war when you have no ammunition? You use the blueprint. You use high-touch marketing. When Spanx officially launched in department stores, Sara didn't sit back and wait for the sales to roll in. She knew that footless pantyhose packaged in a red box looked confusing to the average consumer. They didn't know what it was, so Sara went to the stores herself. She stood next to the displays for 9 hours a day. She talked to every single woman who walked by. She explained the product. She shared her own insecurities. She lifted up her skirt to show women the product on her own body. She took a confusing, intimate piece of clothing and wrapped it in absolute vulnerability and warmth. And she didn't stop there. She needed a gift with purchase. She couldn't afford to give away free product, but she could give away something far more valuable. She gave away her story. She handwrote hundreds of notes to her friends, her family, anyone she had ever met, asking them to go into the stores and just look at the product. She famously called all her friends and told them she would send them a check if they would just go buy a pair to create momentum. She hustled with a level of ferocity that the corporate giants couldn't even comprehend. When a massive daytime television host was looking for new products, Sara didn't send a cold corporate press release. She sent a deeply personal, handwritten card, along with a beautifully wrapped box of her product. It was a gift. It was high touch. And it caught the attention of Oprah Winfrey's stylist, which eventually led to Spanx being named one of Oprah's favorite things. The trajectory of the company changed in a single afternoon, from Estée Lauder in the 1940s to Sara Blakely in the year 2000. 2 women, 2 completely different centuries, 2 completely different products, but the exact same revolution. What is the actual power of the word no? We are conditioned to fear it. We are taught from a very young age that no means stop. No means you are wrong. No means you have failed, but the true titans of industry, the daughters of immigrants who build dynasties, the girls from Florida who turn $5,000 into $1 billion, they understand a fundamental truth about human nature. A no is almost never about you. It is about the person saying it. It is about their lack of vision, their fear of the unknown, Their adherence to the way things have always been done when a gatekeeper tells you number. They are simply telling you that you cannot use their door. That is all. They are not telling you that you cannot enter the building, you just have to find a window or a chimney, or you have to be willing to blow a hole straight through the brick wall. High-touch marketing and the gift with purchase were not just clever business tactics. They were weapons of mass disruption. They were ways of bypassing the gatekeepers entirely. If the buyers won't listen to you, go to the salons. If the executives won't look at your charts, drag them into the bathroom and show them the truth. If you cannot afford to scream through a television screen, whisper directly into the ear of the consumer standing right in front of you. The Spanx revolution was not about shapewear. The Estée Lauder dynasty was not about face cream. They were both about the fierce, unapologetic reclamation of power. They were about understanding that the corporate world is cold, and consumers are starving for warmth. They are starving for authenticity. They are starving for a founder who cares so desperately about their problem that they will stand on their feet for 9 hours a day just to explain the solution. Think about the modern landscape. We are drowning in artificial intelligence, in automated emails, in algorithmic advertising. Everything is optimized, everything is scaled, everything is incredibly, deeply cold. The lesson of the high-touch revolution is more critical right now than it has ever been in human history if you are an entrepreneur today. Staring down your own wall of rejections, looking at a bank account with $5,000, feeling completely overwhelmed by the giants in your industry, you have a choice. You can let the word no break you, or you can let it radicalize you. You can remember the blueprint. You can realize that your lack of funding is a mandate for extreme creativity. You can stop trying to play the corporate game and start playing the human game. How can you touch your customer? How can you surprise them? What is your version of the gift with purchase? What is your version of dropping the bath oil on the department store floor? Sara Blakely didn't invent persistence. She inherited it. She tapped into a lineage of relentless female founders who refused to be told what was possible. She took the spirit of a young girl from Queens, who mixed creams in a backyard laboratory, and carried it into the fitting rooms of the 21st century. The next time you hear the word number, do not flinch, do not lower your head, smile, because the countdown has just begun. The gate is locked, but the window is wide open, and the world is waiting to see exactly how you are going to break in.